You're standing in front of your fridge at 11 p.m., reaching for something sweet you don't even really want. That pull you feel? It's not new. 10 million years ago, somewhere in a shrinking forest, our ancestors are eating the last ripe fruit before winter, and something inside their bodies is quietly changing because of it. Not a habit. Not a choice. Not even hunger, really. So what if the craving you're fighting tonight was written into your body millions of years before sugar even existed? Around 10 to 12 million years ago, the planet was getting colder. Forests in what is now Europe and Africa were beginning to shrink. The ancestors of modern humans, early apes who had lived comfortably in dense, leafy trees, were facing a serious problem. Their food was disappearing. The ripe fruit they had eaten for millions of years was becoming harder to find as the seasons grew longer and harsher. But something remarkable happened. A genetic mutation, a tiny accidental change in a single gene, gave these early apes a powerful new ability. That gene was called UMOD, L1. And according to research led by Dr. James Mullen and his colleagues and published in Current Biology, this mutation changed how the body handled a specific molecule called fructose. Fructose is the type of sugar found in fruit, and this mutation made their bodies far better at turning fructose into fat. That sounds like a bad thing, but at the time, it was a survival gift. An animal that can store energy quickly, as fat can survive a long winter. It can go days without eating. It can travel further in search of food. The early apes with this mutation had an advantage that their relatives without it simply did not have. Over thousands of generations, the mutation spread. It became the standard. And today, every human being on Earth carries a version of that ancient code inside their cells. Here is where it gets unsettling the first time. That mutation did not just help ancient apes survive. It rewired how the body responds to fructose entirely. When you eat something sweet today, a piece of fruit, a slice of cake, a spoonful of honey, your body does not simply process the sugar and move on. It responds to fructose with something closer to urgency. The liver pulls fructose in quickly. It converts it to fat with unusual speed. And crucially, it does not send the usual hunger-stopping signals that other foods send. A brain-fed fructose does not receive a clean message that says, enough. Instead, the ancient machinery hums along, still in survival mode, still treating every bite of sweetness as though winter is coming and nothing should be wasted. Humans did not invent this hunger. They inherited it. Anthropologists and food historians have traced the human relationship with sweetness across thousands of years. Dr. Alyssa Crittenden, a researcher at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, has studied the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer groups on Earth. The Hadza do not farm. They do not process food. They live almost exactly as humans did 100,000 years ago. And when researchers asked them to rank their preferred foods, honey came out at or near the top of nearly every list. The Hadza do not just like honey. They work extraordinarily hard to get it. They climb tall trees. They face bee stings without protection. They follow a wild bird called the Greater Honey Guide, which leads them to hives hidden deep in the bark of trees. This relationship between the Hadza and the honey guide is one of the only known examples of a wild animal and a human working together in a true partnership. And what drives the entire system is a craving that is millions of years old. Dr. Crittenden published findings suggesting that honey and calorie-dense sweet foods may have played a significant role in fueling the growing human brain during evolution. The brain is the single most expensive organ in the body. It burns an enormous amount of energy. Glucose, the simplest form of sugar, is its primary fuel. A body that was good at finding and processing sweetness had a brain that was better supplied. And a better supplied brain could think more clearly, plan more carefully, and survive more challenges. Sweetness, in other words, may have helped make us who we are. But here is where it gets unsettling the second time. The system that evolved to save us is now one of the clearest drivers of the modern health crisis. The same mutation that once helped ancient apes fatten up before a cold season now operates inside human bodies in a world that never stops offering sugar. A Hadza hunter might eat honey a handful of times a month. A person in a modern city can consume the equivalent of that amount in a single afternoon without even trying. Because processed sugar is hidden inside almost everything: bread, sauces, cereals, flavored drinks, and hundreds of foods that do not even taste noticeably sweet. And the ancient machinery cannot tell the difference. It does not know the forest is gone. It does not know that winter is not coming. It just keeps doing what it was built to do: pull the sweetness in, store it, and stay hungry for more. Dr. Robert Lustig, a pediatric endocrinologist, a doctor who specializes in hormones in children at the University of California, San Francisco, has spent decades studying how fructose affects the human liver. In his research and in his book Fat Chance, published in 2012, he argues that fructose behaves differently from other calories in the body. Unlike glucose, which every cell can use, fructose is processed almost entirely by the liver. When it arrives in large quantities, the liver treats it like a form of mild poison and begins converting it into fat at high speed. This can eventually lead to a condition called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which means the liver becomes clogged with fat even in someone who drinks no alcohol at all. Lustig's work is controversial. Some researchers disagree with parts of his conclusions, but what is broadly accepted by the scientific community is that the human body did not evolve to handle fructose in the doses now, found in everyday modern food. We evolved for scarcity. We live in abundance, and our ancient sugar-seeking machinery is not built for abundance. Prehistoric humans were not thinking about addiction when they climbed a tree to reach a beehive. They were not aware that their liver was doing something unusual with the sweetness they swallowed. They simply felt the pull, followed it, and survived because of it. The cravings they felt were not a flaw. They were the point. But those same cravings, when they live inside a modern human, surrounded by unlimited processed sugar, become something else entirely. Studies using brain imaging, pictures that show which parts of the brain are active during different experiences, have shown that sugar activates the same reward pathways in the brain as certain addictive drugs. This does not mean sugar is a drug in the clinical sense. Researchers continue to debate exactly how far that comparison should go. But it does mean that the desire for sweetness is not simply a habit or a choice. It is written into very old parts of the brain, parts that are not easy to override with willpower alone. What this story forces us to confront is something deeply uncomfortable. We tend to think of our cravings as personal failures. We blame ourselves for reaching for something sweet. We build industries around guilt, around diets, around the promise that if we just tried harder, we could stop. But the evidence from genetics, from evolutionary biology, from anthropology, and from neuroscience all points in the same direction. The craving was never ours to choose. It was handed to us by ancestors who needed it to live. This does not mean we are helpless. Knowing the source of a drive is the first step toward understanding it honestly. If we understand that the body experiences a shortage of sweetness signals even after eating fructose, we can make different choices about the environments we build, the schools, the hospitals, the grocery stores, the food systems that decide what is cheap and what is easy. The problem is not human weakness. The problem is an ancient system operating in a completely new world. There is also something worth sitting with quietly. Ancient humans were chasing honey through forests. They were risking bee stings for a moment of sweetness they could not explain. They were building a partnership with a wild bird just to find a hidden hive. They felt the same pull you feel when you walk past something sweet. They just never had enough of it to be harmed by it. We are the first version of this animal that found unlimited sweetness, and we are still running on the original instructions. The forest is gone. The instructions remain.